Who are Cactus? What do you do?
What are Cactus? So we're a people first M&A advisory. So basically, that's a posh way of selling. We help B2B service businesses, traditionally agencies mostly, but we work in the B2B space a lot. Look at the jobs and roles that we need to get done in agency and how AI can do that. How do we help our clients to understand it? How do we help them navigate the implications for them and where the applications are? There's nothing you can do to drag that 95% back into market. You simply have to wait until they're ready. They don't need what it is you're selling right now.
Right, super. Well, we'll see. As I said, this is series 2 of the Channel's own podcast. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to anyone who's listening or watching. I'm joined today. We've got Dan from Cactus. Now, so Dan, do us a favour. Just how would you describe Cactus? What are Cactus? Who are Cactus? What do you do?
What are Cactus? So we're a people first M&A advisory. So basically, that's a posh way of selling. We help B2B service businesses, traditionally agencies mostly, but we work in the B2B space a lot to buy and sell. So anyone looking to growth or acquisition, either looking to exit and realize the value they've built. But many businesses, even they come to us from an M&A perspective, aren't quite ready to do that. We've then got our consulting services which help businesses to get to that point. So we'll do our full checks and backgrounds to kind of help them realize where they're lacking, and then we'll kind of work with them to get into a point where they're ready to go to market, because there's little point going to market unless you're ready, unless you're going to be well set up to actually get the value you want. There's nothing worse than going to market, not being ready, and not getting the value for the asset you've spent so much time and your energy building.
Yeah, I know the business, of course, because Spencer. I don't know what Spencer's. He's one of your founders, I think, isn't he? Now that would be his title, probably.
Yeah,
I don't know if he's
co-founder.
I remember Spencer from back in the late 1990s, and I think he started web design basically out of a shed in the back garden, didn't he, at his mum's house or something? I think that's the founder. That's the founder story, and then from there built up the business. Sold. I remember Blue Halo. Blue Halo did a website for me, probably early 2000s, if I remember rightly, and then. But it's extraordinary, I think, to see from that to build a business. But as I say, advisory now with regards to buying and selling digital agencies. It's very, very impressive. So what do you do? We know what Cactus does. What about you in particular then?
Yeah. So I'm specifically marketing and lead generation for I say for agencies, but also B2B businesses as well. I work with a lot of B2B service businesses to help them. There's a lot of parallels between agencies and more wider B2B lead gen, B2B service businesses. So I help them to build that internal marketing engine, help them get in place the strategies and plans that really helps them take control of their own pipeline. So I'll kind of come in as a consultant. I don't really like calling myself consultant. I'm an ex-agency marketeer who now works with agencies and businesses to help them get their own marketing going. You would say that is what a consultant is, but
you would. But the question then on that one: Do you? I've got a bee in my bonnet at the moment about how things have changed so dramatically since 2020, since March 2020, since lockdown, and so later on that year when lockdown pretty much, because we originally thought it was going to be what was it? Was it 2 weeks to flatten the curve, I think, and we were going to be back to normal?
Yeah.
But
18 months later.
What are your thoughts in terms of, because I think the world has changed dramatically since then, and in that respect, if we focus it on the demand gen side, because I think that's of interest to me always, and of interest to you, and probably to anyone who's watching or listening, how has demand gen changed since, as I said, that divide, that kind of before lockdown or after lockdown? What do you think changes?
Oh, that's a good question. I think a lot has changed. A lot changed in the short term, but then a lot of stuff has changed in the longer term. Now, certainly we know, the immediate changes like remoteness, remote working, and sort of accessibility to people. We're a lot more accepting now of kind of doing stuff remotely over Zoom, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
I think there was certainly the pressures on businesses in terms of, what was happening during that period, and what we thought would be like a 6 to 12 month kind of struggle, and stuff will get back to normal. We seem to have had this wave of kind of bad luck where the market hasn't really recovered. We've had we've had recessions, we've had the hangover from COVID, we've had political, turmoil and disruption. Well, the elections this summer just gone. We've had, political and kind of, the wars around the world impacting stuff like that. So it feels like we've had a really bad run of things which have impacted things. So it doesn't feel like things have ever recovered since those periods, but it feels more like we've kind of adapted as businesses to it. Certainly, budgets are definitely tighter. Decisions are being made a little bit slower. And, one thing we did see, certainly from an agency perspective, was there was an explosion of new agencies coming on the scene. A lot of people, unfortunately, left, their careers, left their jobs during that period. Furlough only kind of covered things for so long and kind of papered over the cracks a little bit. But a lot of people left, and a lot of people went in and went, I'm going to start my own agency. I'm going to start my own business, what I can do, be it freelancing, that then led into agency, to something a little bit more sustained. But that has meant there has been a huge saturation of agencies in the UK, in the market, which has made it's even harder for other agencies to then win more work. So the need to differentiate has been really, really important. The need to really understand who your target customers are has never been more important. The need to lead by a perspective opinion, not just service offering, for that reason of saturation, has also been really important. And it has led agencies to, rather than chasing leads which are in market, so if we think about a 95-5 rule from the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, which is one of my favorite pieces of research, I'm sure
what's that? I don't know that. What is it?
Oh, okay. 95-5 rule basically says there's only, in B2B, there's only 5% of your audience are in market at any one time. 95% are out of market. And contrary to what we think, there's nothing you can do to drag that 95% back into market. You simply have to wait until they're ready. They don't need what it is you're selling right now.
Yeah.
So as marketing, as kind of marketing teams, our job is to not try and find the 5%, but to nurture and build relationships, trust and chemistry with that 95 ready when they are back in market, which is why B2B buying cycles can take so long. And I think, for all these reasons, it's kind of created this perfect kind of thunderstorm of turmoil for agencies over the last few years, which, unfortunately, quite a few haven't survived it. And even the more established ones, the bigger players in the market, have found it incredibly difficult.
And are the customers buying the same thing? Because I've had a torrid year. As I said, 2024 was not a bad year for my consulting business, my kind of whiteboarding work. Not a bad year at all. But 2025, very different, a real challenge. And I was at an event last week and saw a kind of senior sales figure within a big tech company, and he said the numbers then 55% of target for this year. 55%, that's half of what they were intending to do, half of what they were probably, if you think of the organization, they probably got in situ to deliver on what they thought was the market. That's a big overhang with regards to costs and so on. So, but I actually think I said my customer, whether it's timing, I don't think it's so much timing. Also, they're not buying the same things. I think what customers maybe want today is not the same as it was in 2024. Let's see if we can get some insight into your customers here. The difference from mine required the old school face-to-face selling context, meetings, customer meetings, meeting rooms, boardrooms. It was a face-to-face selling and presentation. That, which was the norm, maybe it was 80% face-to-face, 10 to 20% online, pre-lockdown. I would say it's now completely flipped, and I don't ever see it going back. There's still going to be face-to-face, but so in many respects, I said the customers, not only is it about timing, I actually think their requirement has changed. So I don't know whether you've seen the same thing in the agency space. Are there things that customers wanted 4 years ago that they no longer care about? Yes and no. I think there are still consistencies with what they needed. I think as
businesses have evolved. Clearly, there's been new requirements. I think where it's changed slightly, though, is what clients are, so speaking from an agency perspective, what clients and prospects are looking for is they're not looking for the kind of broadness they might have had before. They're actually looking for more specialists within key areas now.
Yeah.
So it goes back to the point around agencies, being able to differentiate themselves and to kind of have a niche, if you like. We're seeing probably that niche is more important now than it was before, as prospects and clients look for specialists within key areas. They're looking for almost like T-shaped agencies rather than necessarily, full service as a term we've bound around a lot. But rather than looking for like full service agencies, they'll be looking to create almost, agency rosters and partnerships of complementary agencies who are all got specialisms with their key areas. And I think that's the trick for the CMOs who are running brands, who are using agencies, is to thinking about, what their agency strategy is, what agencies do they need to fulfill what pains or challenges they've got in the business. And they'll be looking for very specific agencies to fill certain points. That's probably what I've seen changing. I think the fundamentals of what they actually need still exist. They've still got stuff they need to get done. They still have a lot of the, same pains and challenges they've had, but how they're getting those things done and and being more aware of what they are has probably changed and evolved. They've got data points to kind of pull on to inform stuff. Clearly technology is changing at a massive pace. There's new customers and competitors in the market. So they need to be a little bit more innovative in how they can use the right agencies in order to do that and to react at speed with their own market inside their own business is probably changing. That probably brings in a world of different pains and challenges they've got in itself.
Right. So more. Did you say T-shaped? Did you say that there at some point? Did you say something?
Yeah, I'd say T-shaped. So
what does that mean?
Yeah. So I think it kind of means more. They've got little T head on the T is a little bit. They've got broad awareness, but their specialism goes deep.
All right.
So you've kind of got the T-shape. So you're narrow and deep. You're not kind of like broad and shallow.
Right.
So that's what we would say. Yeah.
And broad and shallow would have been the one-stop shop as was then is probably certainly because there is a need for it. But you're probably saying that actually there may be now more requirement for specialisms in certain key areas. Because I just wonder as to whether part of that is going to be we've got to try and find out what are the specialisms, particularly in the agency area. We've got to try and find out what specialisms is the customer going to want next year and the year after. Because let's bring the let's bring the constant theme at the moment, I suppose, of AI into this. Surely AI is going to have a massive impact in the agency world, or am I wrong in that?
No, I think you're absolutely right. It is going to disrupt it. It is already causing disruption to it, and you're absolutely right as well. I think that where agencies, rather than trying to focus on the here and now or the next few months, the agencies who can look ahead, can predict maybe 12, 18 months out, especially from a prospect perspective. So thinking about what's the future challenges their target audience is going to have, and using almost building that into their proposition, building that into their marketing is going to position themselves more valuable than necessarily trying to react to the pains and challenges they have now. Because, you're right, a lot could change in the next 12, 18 months. And agencies a lot will change. So as long as agencies are focused on that and they've got kind of one eye in the future, that's going to help them to constantly be innovating, looking at new tech, looking at new trends, and being set up and almost being integral to an agent, to a business. As an agency.
It's going to require an awful lot of flexibility, which is. Again, my guess is actually the agency businesses are probably used to needing to be flexible to a degree. But as I said, I think it's quite difficult to predict. It's quite difficult to predict.
Yeah,
certainly
it is hard.
We can see 2020. We're coming to the end of 2024, so we think we can see 2025. But 2026 is only a year away.
Yeah, it's not that far away. And to answer to your, you mentioned there about AI and the disruption it's going to have. There's a big opportunity for agencies to use it. And as a sector, we're probably, we're well ahead of where other brands are. You think about the hype cycle, we're well ahead of things and getting overexcited about the implementation of it, what it means, perhaps the ramifications of AI. We're much further ahead of the curve than a lot of traditional brands are. To quote, a friend of mine who's CTO at Zoopla, when I spoke to him about Web3, and said, what were you trying to do in the Web3 space? He said, we're trying to figure out Web2 at the moment. So it kind of gives you an appreciation for how far behind actually some brands are, not necessarily far behind, but how further ahead agencies are. So if you can be thinking about, actually, how do we use AI to drive efficiencies? How can we use it to perhaps look at the jobs and roles that we need to get done in agency, and how AI can do that? How do we help our clients to understand it? How do we help them navigate the implications for them and where the applications are? That's really the big learning space for agencies is, how do they use it for themselves, and how do they be able to be in a strong position to advise their own clients?
Ultimately, I said, just as you were saying that there, it does make me realize you mentioned the guy in Zoopla. In some respects, it gives you some confidence to know that actually everybody's in a slightly confused state at this moment in time. It's not just me. It's not just you. Do you know what I mean? I think it's everybody is having to deal with. It's a little bit like the analogy I'd use. A bit like you went away on holidays and you've come back and people have moved the furniture in the room, or there's stuff in the drawer that you thought was there and it's not there anymore. It's moved somewhere else. It's familiar. But it's a bit tricky, and it's a bit and a bit of a challenge. So interesting. What do agencies do? Because demand gen is I think a common challenge, certainly for, I would have said, for a large number of people who will be paying any attention to this episode or this series of the podcast in general. Where does LinkedIn fit in as a, don't know whether you'd call it a marketing tool? How do agencies use LinkedIn? Is it for recruitment, or do they use it for just kind of, I don't know, customer knowledge and awareness, or do they use it for marketing and sales?
You know what? I think it's all of them, Mark. I think it's all of them. It's a really powerful platform. Love it or hate it, and everyone's got their own LinkedIn horror stories and stuff they don't like about it, but then everyone still goes back. But as a tool, it's really powerful.
Horror stories? What horror story? I love it. I love
it. I've heard horror stories around people have used it and they don't like it and certain types of content, and it's becoming Facebook and stuff like that.
It is in some sense.
Love it or loathe it. It's a really powerful tool, and it's a really good way for especially agencies to be connected to their prospects or their wider network, and to be ever present in front of them with little micro nudges. So you think about in B2B marketing, we're trying to stay top of mind for when the time is right. We go back to that 95/5 rule that most of our audience are out of market. So we need to find a way to stay top of mind with them. We need to find a way to create little touch points and nudges so we stay within their mind. Proposition 101, how do you get recall at the kind of the front of your mind? And LinkedIn's really good for doing that. So to be able to share tips and advice, bits of content that appears in a target prospect's feed straight away without you having to sell messages, just little nudges. It's really, really powerful at doing that. It's a good way of using it as almost like your personal CRM. So I use it a bit like my personal CRM. So everyone I kind of know, rather than add it to my formal HubSpot CRM by back at Cactus, I'll add people to my own network on LinkedIn. And it's a really good way of just keeping update with what people are doing, job movements, changes, industry news, what new case studies or pieces of work people have shared, any opinions or polls or research anyone's connected. It all appears here in your feed. So answer to your original question, and you mentioned a few different areas there, it does all of those things. It allows you to stay on top of trends, stay connected and front of mind with prospects, stay connected with the rest of your network for things like referrals and recommendations. It's your own kind of personal CRM to allow you to manage a wide network you've got. So I think it's all of these different areas. It's not the be all and end all, but it is becoming so ingrained in our lives. I think a lot of us, big question, if LinkedIn went down tomorrow.
Yes. Carry on the point, is it? If it went down,
if it went down tomorrow, how many of us would be, a little bit up the creek without a paddle if they didn't have your LinkedIn tomorrow? And that's quite a fundamental question to ask yourself, to think about. Yes. Could I still do what I do, or could I still function if I didn't have access to LinkedIn, if it disappeared tomorrow? That's ultimately what it is. Someone else owns and manages all of that data. It's a large corporation who owns it. So we're getting into the realms of, big data controlled by large corporates here, but it is a
look what they
consideration.
built for us, though. I think actually what they've built and what they're building is very impressive. It seems as if everybody is on there. It certainly might not have been the case 14, 15 years ago, but everyone is on there. I think you might be right if people are saying it's getting a bit Facebooky. Some of the posts, and I'm guilty myself of putting some posts up that are perhaps, but I think people experience that more personal posts actually get a bit more traction, get more kind of engagement
definitely.
with people.
Yeah, because that's the human element, isn't it? It's the human element of it. Doing a out and out business post or something too silly, people don't really respond to. But if you have a little bit of vulnerability, a little bit of personal insight, picture of your dog is probably one of the biggest LinkedIn posts impressions I've ever seen from someone do. So there's all these, if that's what it is, it's a human to human platform, and that's what B2B is about trust and chemistry, it's relationship marketing, and that's LinkedIn kind of provides you the platform to do that. So it stands to reason that actually the more human posts are gonna resonate more.
My most viewed post was a proud dad post, and I knew it was going to work. I'd seen somebody online a few weeks earlier, oddly enough, somebody screeding a floor. Do you know what I mean by screed? This guy, he put a post on about his daughter was just about to go to university and she wanted some money to take with her, so she'd come and helped him do some screeding on a kitchen floor somewhere, and he just filmed her shoveling this stuff into a wheelbarrow and moving it along. I'm telling you, it had got, and his one was proud #ProudDad, and if my memory is right, it must have seriously about 60,000 impressions, 5,000 likes, huge number of comments, but people were arguing with the fact that he was claiming that she'd shifted so much weight of whatever it is they're mixing. And so there was some people arguing about that, but huge engagement. So I tried to do a similar thing a week later. My daughter works at CC Computer Center, and I put up a little post, a little picture of myself and her outside their offices, a proud dad, and that also got more impressions than anything else I've ever done. So it does like the personal side of things, but at least then go back to what you said. It is keeping me, again, if I use it for promotional purposes, it's keeping me front of mind. So to keep front of mind, you have to be posting. You've got to keep posting interesting stuff on a regular basis. So
you do, and that's the variation in content. You just like if you every single day you just posted a sales message, nobody would really take you seriously. They just feel, oh, Mark's just constantly selling. I'm already getting value from being connected to him. Whereas if if you post every day, you post 5 times a week, let's say Monday to Friday, you post every day, and 1 in 5 of those, you could probably get forgiven for being a bit salesy, a little bit promo. We'd forgive that. It's fine. As long as the other stuff around it was a little bit more either value adding or insightful into your kind of life, a little bit more emotive, shared something of relevance. So I think as long as you're varying posts, I think every once in a while, it's absolutely fine to do that, because that's why we're all on there. We're all on there to kind of grow professional networks. We invest probably time, a lot of emotional time and effort, as well as financial. If you've got, Sales Navigator, or you paid for premium features, whatever, you've invested actual money in it as well. So it's fine to be able to then use that and almost commercialize your network, but you have to be quite smart about it. It's almost the non-selling does a better job of selling than if you're actually selling on there.
Correct. And in the real world, it said it's again about keeping top of mind. The analogy I'd use there is there's a local builder around here where we live in Hertfordshire, who, if ever you go to the local gastropub, you know what I mean, is generally in the evening seated in the same seat in the corner of the bar. Seriously, my guess is if you go in there, you see him, he might buy you a drink too if he knows you might need his services. So he doesn't really have to pitch or sell his services at all. But for all of us, he's still front of mind. So that all of a sudden, if you need a bit of plastering done or some work, who's the first name that comes to mind? It is that person. So in the real world, as I said, for him, sitting in the corner of a bar is his version of maintaining that kind of top of mind space. Whereas with ourselves in this, again, we're in a massively distributed world as well. If you think about the geography that we cover on LinkedIn, I've got as you will have, I'm sure your network effectively is global. It's worldwide. There are people in many various countries. So you mentioned Sales Navigator. Do you use that?
I don't personally. I just don't use it in that way. I don't create, lists of kind of prospects and do outbound targeting on it. I'm a little bit more organic with it, but I do know some businesses who use it and actually swear by it.
They do, do they?
I must admit,
I pay for it. I'm not sure I get much value out of it.
Yeah, a lot of businesses will use it. It's good for prospecting, it's good for building lists, and if you're doing a lot of outreach and stuff, it can be quite powerful for doing that. I don't, because I don't use it in that kind of way. But as I said, it kind of works depending on what you're trying to get out of it, what your kind of business is, and what your kind of approach is. But I love the analogy of your builder in the bar, because that's really what you're doing on LinkedIn. You're there, you're present, you're holding court, and you're just engaging with people either through DMs or comments or likes or shares. You'll share your perspective opinions on there through your content. And that's really you finding your little corner of the bar and interacting with people as they kind of come and go. On the hope that you build up a good perception, and when someone needs a bit of building work doing or plastering, they'll drop you a DM and off you go. So
I know for a fact it works very, very well indeed. So I say most of the tradespeople I know, they all have I think they all have a similar strategy in some respects. They keep themselves out there in the social network, in the real world social network, with a view to everybody likes to do business, if you think about it, with somebody they know, and somebody they trust. And that allows us to move nicely on to, I say, one of the, because I liked your blog posts. Would you call them articles, I think, more than a blog post on LinkedIn? And one of the points that you made, I can't remember, I think it might have been the demand gen post that you put up recently, but at one point towards, I think, the end of the article, you mentioned trust and... What's the word I'm looking for?
Chemistry.
I mean, because again, I said that jumped out to me because I don't often hear that. I don't hear that word often, and yet it's clearly fundamental. I've spent my life in sales, and I'd like to think, I said, the people I've done business with, there's generally always been a very, very good chemistry. So, what does chemistry mean to you?
Whether or not you've done it intentionally through what you've been doing for the last however many years, long time, I know, and you've been building that trust and chemistry all the way you go. So what I mean by trust and chemistry is, in B2B, it's a very relationship medium. We look to build human to human kind of relationships, and when we say trust and chemistry, the building blocks of B2B, that's because we're not such as a consumer relationship, which is a little bit more transactional. You might, sign up for something, you can trial it because there's an offer on, like a first month free or a 10% off subscription or something like that. So it's a little bit more passive, a little bit more transactional. But in B2B, it's actually based on whether or not the person is not just what they're selling or what you need, but what's the rapport like, because you're undoubtedly going to have to work with that person. So it doesn't just come into an agency, for example, what they're selling or what their service offering or how good they are at it or their experience and stuff. It's going to come down to, can I work with them as the team? Can I trust them to get done what I need them to get done? Because I want to look good inside my own business, and nobody wants to bring in partners who reflect badly on them, because there is a reflection thing. And I want to be able to get along with them as well. So if we're going to have regular meetings, we're going to be working together closely, there's got to be that rapport, there's got to be that chemistry there, because we probably all had relationships in the past, either personal or professional, where the chemistry just isn't there. It just makes everything a little bit harder. So as humans, we're naturally ingrained to try and find and gravitate towards the people we get along with. And that's the same in B2B. We want to get along with the people we're working with so we can enjoy what we're doing, we get the most out of it. And I would argue the best outcomes from working together comes from when you're almost you're on the same level as each other. You've got the same sort of maybe sense of humor, same sort of likes and interests. You just get along. And that also came out, I know I shared with you, previously a copy of the agency growth survey I put together, if you don't mind a mention for the growth survey, where we spoke to 280 agencies, and we looked at where the biggest clients were coming from and why they were chosen. And one of the top reasons was trust and chemistry. It was a really recurring theme that came out. And whilst it wasn't the be all and end all, it was certainly a very high contributing factor. In fact, it was in the top 3 of why agencies were chosen by their biggest clients. Wasn't just come down to kind of what they offer in or their sector experience or whatever. It was down to, can I get along with them? Are they going to make me look good? Do I feel like I can trust them? And are we going to have a good time doing it? So it's a really, really important thing not to be overlooked at all. And agencies definitely want to put that at the forefront of their kind of outbound efforts by, how do you come across as human? How do I build good relationships with people?
Yes.
How do I come across as a very trustworthy individual or business?
Yeah, and I think that you said that the common points are generally very influential with regards to that. It may even come down to, I did work a number of years ago with a big tech company, and I can tell you now, as sure as eggs is eggs, there was like a clique within the senior management. Yeah, there was, if you imagine an org chart, I don't know if you ever read the book, there was a book called Power-Based Selling many years ago, and you draw an org chart, so that shows hierarchy. But then within that, you could probably draw around some people and say that was up to power base. So within that group, so this person here might have more authority than this person down here, but this one, because they're in the in group, might have more influence. But I remember, the commonality there, they all worked for the same company. They're kind of similar age-ish in many respects, but also the other one was they all supported the same football team, and it might be as banal in many respects as that. I have always, not that I meet many Welshmen out there in business, but my Welsh character and background often for many people, I don't know, they might have a Welsh grandfather or somebody in the family who's from that part. That again is one of those areas where we can kind of get a little bit of chemistry going, and we all have things in common. Of course, I'm taking a punt here, but I'm guessing, Dan, you like pizza. I mean, you like pizza. Hey, I like pizza too. We both like pizza. Yeah. Hey, can you believe it? Do you like the Beatles? I like the Beatles too. Most people like the Beatles. So straight away, we've got a kind of rapport, I think, that we can build on. Do you think again, in the online world, in the Zoom Teams landscape, I say we're working on these virtual platforms, it's not as easy, I don't think, to strike up a rapport. And rapport would probably, as I said, is those things are kind of nested together, aren't they? You say trust, rapport, and I think chemistry would be integral. Not as easy to do if I can't really reach out and touch the person.
Yeah, you're so right. It's really hard to do, and I think you have to almost go out of your way to try and make sure you've established that connection. That's really hard over a Zoom call. One thing I always advocate for, as does everyone within the Cactus team, in fact, it's something Spencer's really ingrained into everyone, is get out and see the whites of people's eyes. And what he means by that is the old Saatchi model, is built on lunches and dinners, because spending time with someone, like we know, we have a higher conversion rate, conversion rate if we meet people in person. If we can get out and have a lunch with them, have a dinner, have a drink, even just a coffee, just something other than a digital interaction, we have a higher chance of that deal coming off, or someone working with us. Why? Because we'll be able to establish a better rapport, bit of trust and chemistry, and you always will be able to trust someone more once you've met them in person. Because what do they say? Certainly not a psychologist or anything, but body language is so much, and you can lose so much of that on Zoom. You can fabricate certain amount of that by Zoom, by how you've cropped, how your lighting appears, what you're dressed, but you can't fake that when you meet someone in person. You size someone up immediately, subconsciously. The split second you see them, you kind of clock in, how they carry themselves, what they look like, whether they look you in the eye or not, how strong the handshake is, or whatever the interaction is, and you miss those subtleties, those nuances when you do it over Zoom.
As we're on a one-to-one here, you've got all of my attention, I probably got all of yours, and we can, even though it's say that body language element, but we can read one another to a degree. It's not as the same as if we were in the same room sitting across a table, but it really gets challenging if you're on a call and you've got 4 or 5 people on there. Because, and particularly then if you go into screen share, somebody goes into screen share. I've just got some postage stamps now at the side of my screen with people's faces in.
Yeah.
I cannot read. You say you can't read that room. And if I was in a boardroom at a whiteboard, which is where I prefer to be, and I would be pitching or talking, as I say, as a kind of facilitator, you can take in all of the people in the room. You can sense the atmosphere, and you can read the thoughts. Actually, in many people, you can see it on their face if they agree or disagree or are thoughtful. That's gone on, as I said, on a one-to-one Zoom call. You can probably do it, but once there's more than 2 or 3 people, you can't keep your eyes on.
It's really hard, isn't it? Because we all meet those people who, they have like a kind of resting face, and you kind of think, oh God, that person looks really sour. They're not interested. They're really hard to read. And if you're not having any interaction with them, they can look really serious and really, very straight. And we've all had it. I've had it, being on it, kind of go.
I had it recently. You mentioned that. I can think of the guy that, and I just couldn't make it out at all.
Yeah. And sometimes I've certainly found 9 times out of 10, that's not the case. That's just the person's, that's how they hold themselves.
Yes.
But on a Zoom call, that could totally get lost because they don't say too much. You don't have a chance to really interact with them directly. Everyone says bye at the end of the call, and you come off the call kind of thinking, oh, crikey, then how did that go? I couldn't know. Whereas if you're in person, you met that person, the minute you talk to that person and engage them, you probably see their face light up, warm handshake, really like what you did, and you go, oh, it's absolutely fine. I think that's really, really important, is to, in B2B, the sales processes, when you've got that prospect experience and you're mapping out what that end-to-end prospect experience looks like from when you first meet people through to hopefully, converting them into clients, building in a physical touch point at some point, find a way to go and meet them. Like sometimes geographically it's not possible, if you're working with people in other countries and stuff, but certainly if geography doesn't forbid, find a way to meet them in person. And I guarantee you'll watch your conversion rate go up by doing that, because
I definitely agree. I think it was always that, but I think the challenge might be for many salespeople now would be that the customer, if it's a first meeting, whereas the norm would be, as I said, in whether it was 5 or 10 years ago, the norm would have been, even that first meeting would have been face to face. You probably would have driven to the customer site. They'd have picked you up in reception. They'd have taken you to a meeting room or wherever, and you'd have had, as I said, even before or after the meeting, that little, you see, a liminal space, they kind of call it, where that part, as you're making your way to the meeting room or coming out of the meeting room, those conversations, all of that effectively now has gone. But the customers now, I think, it's so much more convenient to do something online. So I think you're really going to have to, you've got to have a reason to go along and see them. Yeah. So maybe a first meeting might be difficult, but if you're moving further with your proposal and they want to talk about it in more detail, then maybe that's a great opportunity. Yeah. But I also like your idea.
I think that's what's changed.
Because I'm talking over your apologies
that's
here.
Right.
I've always liked, say, something to eat and something to drink. I think not too much, but I think whether it's a couple of beers, it was maybe my age, my culture, 1980s sales guys. It was very, very common. Even lunchtime, a couple of beers. That was very, very common. Not so much now, but I think time with them in a relaxed environment where you're probably not talking about work at all. Is very, very beneficial. I can probably look at all of the companies and customers that I've worked with over the years, and I've got a very good recollection and memory for it. I wouldn't be able to tell you how much the meal cost, but I could probably tell you where we met. Couldn't tell you what we ate. I might be able to tell you what we talked about. But I like to deal with I like the customer effectively to become. I suppose that's part of it. I like the part of the chemistry. I like them to become a friend in some way, shape.
Yeah, and it can feel like cliche saying that, our clients are friends, but I think when we say that, we don't literally mean we're going to be friends with them, because you do obviously want to have that separation.
I'm doing an in between us.
You are. We don't want to kind of fire or have difficult conversations with our friends, but I think what we mean by that is, we want to be able to have a rapport with them. We want to be able to get on. We want to be able to have open conversations, to collaborate a little bit openly. Yes. Whilst I think that what we had probably pre-COVID, go back to the kind of the 2020 sort of time, is whilst you had a fairly legacy or heritage way of doing things, you'd kind of meet people up front first and then you progress through the kind of sales process. I think what we're seeing now in 2024 and beyond, and even more apparent in the coming years, is we want to build in that physical encounter with someone. So we want a chance to meet them in person, go out for that drink, go out for something to eat, whatever it could be. But it doesn't have to come so upfront like it maybe traditionally did. Maybe digital mediums have allowed us to meet someone virtually first to kind of qualify a little bit as well. And then once we go, okay, yeah, they qualify, there is a good fit, it becomes from a marketing qualified lead to a sales qualified lead, there is a need there. Now maybe I can invest the time by going, let's find an opportunity to come and meet them. Maybe once I put together a proposal, I'll come and do that in person. Or even if I've done the proposal, let's just make sure there's a touch point further down.
Yes.
Whereas traditionally it would have happened up front. I think it's now about just moving the process around a little bit and seeing where it fits in.
So I'm guessing the mega touch point for yourselves and Cactus is, don't you have like an event? I don't know if it's an annual event. Don't you do a kind of big gathering and an agency get together also? You do things along those lines, don't you?
Yeah, we do lots of that. We have some bigger sort of one day conference. Sounds very corporate. It's a day of learning, if you like, but it's a real chance to bring people together. And whilst we have content and talks and what have you happening across the day, biggest value of it is just being able to spend time and meet people. In fact, sometimes meeting people we've spoken to for 6 months but haven't actually ever met before. So we try and build into all of our marketing, a lot of the activity we do, opportunities to spend time with people, have those meaningful conversations, create memorable experiences together, because that gives you rapport. If you've met someone and you've done something interesting together, something beyond just a lunch or dinner, but something that's a little bit more quirky to it, something that's a little bit more memorable, you will always have that with someone. So you're able to then call back, I remember that time we went to that whatever place and did whatever. Wasn't that great? Oh God, yeah, and it was brilliant. And you've kind of got that to fall back on versus no one ever says, oh, remember that time we went to Costa Coffee and had a medium latte? No one kind of says that. Whereas
that's right.
Yeah, whereas remember, do you remember we were riding those beer bikes around London and we were talking about all the stuff we could do while riding around on a beer bike. You kind of go, okay, yeah, that's memorable.
A beer bike, but I think I know what you're talking about. But it's always been part of my, if I don't use the word shtick in some respects, but I was kind of 6'3" red-headed Welshman with one eye. I mean, there's kind of not many, and I used to, when I was in my late 20s, it's bizarre. I used to wear a bow tie as well. I mean, talk about standing out. But, and also, as I said, strong Welsh accent, all of these things, and it's not affected in any way. I've lived outside of Wales for 37 years, and people can still pick up my accent in seconds. Oddly enough, maybe finish here with this. I'll bring AI back into it. I use ChatGPT on my phone, and here, when I can give a prompt, I can give a verbal prompt. I don't know if you've used that. You don't have to type the prompt in. I can give a verbal prompt.
Yeah,
I have no idea why it does it, but it about 10% of the time, it will convert what I say into Welsh. Got no idea what, literally Welsh language prompt, and it'll give me a Welsh language answer. I then have to say, no, in English, please. And it'll then apologize for that and retry it. But I've never told it in the setup, I'm not a Welsh speaker. But it's clearly picking up my accent.
Yeah,
it's extraordinary.
It's the intelligence of it. It's picking up the stuff you're not saying, but it's picking up maybe background noise. If you use voice prompts on ChatGPT and other platforms you can use, it picks up your language. If you've got a dog barking in the background, it'll pick up and it'll learn about you that you probably have a dog. And if you ever go into...
Is it learning about me, is it?
It is, yeah, it is learning about you. If you go into ChatGPT after you've used it for a few months, you search, it's a really interesting exercise. Go and say, hi chat, tell me, because I'm very polite, because I'm millennial, so I'm very polite to AIs. Hi chat, could you, how would you describe me based on what you know about me? And the answer it will give you is freakishly accurate. Like, give it a try. The things it has learned about you by the searches, the stuff you're asking for, the stuff it hears when you're giving it voice prompts and voice commands, it'll pick up, it'll give a really good,
incredible,
scarily accurate. Yeah, try it.
I'm tempted to try it here live on here, but I better not, just in case. But
just in case.
But I think that so when you look at that, it is extraordinary. I'm using ChatGPT. It's like having a little philosopher buddy. I mean, I can ask it all sorts of questions, and it's so nice also to have my questions answered, as I used to put questions into Google, and the Google feed would come up with kind of sponsored kind of adverts and whatever else. Lovely. I'm using ChatGPT just to get the crux of it. And it's also very polite. Maybe it's polite back. You mentioned I also say please and thank you when I'm dealing with it. So really, really, really interesting. And as said, it's possibly, it is an extraordinarily transformational tool. We talked about digital transformation for many years. Now businesses needed to, I suppose, lay down that kind of technical infrastructure and architecture for their business. But I think the use of AI by individuals, by teams, and by businesses is extraordinarily transformational. Yeah. So and none of us really know where it will go. Or
no, it's not. And the Tin Hat Brigade will kind of say it's going to lead to world domination and Skynet is real and all this kind of stuff. And I don't know if it gets to that point. That gets a little bit. Can get a little realms of science fiction a little bit. But the fact is, it is there, and it's not, and how we use it can drive massive efficiencies for even us running businesses, the efficiencies it can drive. You said there you've got it as a voice assistant. I've got my own AI tech stack, if you like, that I use day to day to help me be more efficient, to help me do tasks which would historically have taken even 20 minutes, half an hour to do, or sit down and think about and come up with an hour. ChatGPT is helping to give me inspiration around content. It can help me refine language around things, which I probably would have spent 3 times as long trying to do it myself before.
Completely.
There's other tools we can use for meeting notes. There's integrations that'll put those meeting notes straight into your CRM for you, which is before something I would have to done manually. I would have to kind of refine my notes, try and read what the hell I'd scribbled, and then type them in some sort of order. Now you can just do that straight in off the back of a meeting. So it's driving huge efficiencies, and the opportunity for us as businesses to go, what efficiencies can it drive for us? How do we then, the margin that's then creating for us, how do we then reinvest that to drive more margin? And that's where AI is going to be really, really powerful for businesses. Isn't what you can build with it and what you can do for clients with it. It's how you can use it yourself to drive margin.
It's a huge force multiplier, I think, and we are yet to see and realize what it's capable of doing. But I think for individuals that are able to utilize it and make it work for them will have an enormous advantage over others. So I'm looking forward to it. It's been a lot. It's already been, and it can be quite good fun as well. I did a speech at a dinner a few months ago, and I asked ChatGPT. I wanted to do a kind of roast. Do you know what I mean? I was kind of wanted to nail the guy whose event it was. And I could put into ChatGPT, right, this is what he likes. He's a middle-aged man in Lycra. He likes this, that, and the other. And said, write me a humorous speech in the style of, and I could have put anybody in there, in the style of Ken Dodd, in the style of Bill Burr or whatever. And it was breathtaking. I mean, I was howling with the quality of the response.
That's, if you try to write that yourself, it would have taken you a little longer to get there. Whereas you can take something out of that and you go...
It would not have been as good. I edited it as you would, you know what I mean?
Of course you would. You refine it down and...
So listen, Dan, that's I could take up the rest of your day quite happily. I am interested to find out what is it you're using AI for. You said you've got some kind of tools you use during the day, but maybe let's park it for the time being and come back in 2025 and review what the changes have been. I think we're going into a period of major change.
It's all experimentation. And I'd say for anyone kind of listening to this, if they're not really using AI day to day, start doing it. Even if you go, I don't really understand it at all. I don't understand this bit for it. There was millions of platforms out there. Best advice is just start playing with them, see what others are using, play with them, test them, because it's through learning that you will learn and have your own understanding of it. And, my knowledge has massively increased over the last year by kind of immersing myself in it and going, I'm going to be using it. I'm going to use it every day. I'm going to play with different platforms and different.
It's a bit like on that one, the way you've described it, Dan. It's a bit like a musical instrument. I don't know if you play anything, but you might see behind me, I've got guitars and ukuleles here. But it's in some respects similar to learning to play an instrument. You try it the first time, it's a little bit awkward. You don't have any confidence in it, and maybe you get maybe you get a positive experience initially, and that gives you the kind of confidence to pursue it. But as you said, I think for anyone using these tools, I don't think there's anyone who would instantly be able to optimize it. I think what you have to, as I say, develop the capability, understanding, and the confidence as well. So we'll bring our time together to a close here. Thanks ever so much for your candor, for being as open
so
and
welcome.
as interesting
really enjoyed it.
as you've been. Yeah, and I've really enjoyed it too. And I'm going to go away and I'm going to ask ChatGPT what it makes of me. Is it possibly also listening to what? Oh, it's not, is it? Is it listening to what's going on, even though I haven't got the app open?
No, I don't. I would hope not, and I would have thought not, but who knows? Who knows? Is it constantly listening? I mean, we know assistants are. We know Alexa is. We know kind of Siri is. We know they're all passively listening and learning. It's all in the T's and C's in there. Whether or not ChatGPT or others are, who knows? It wouldn't surprise me, but it's a good exercise to do.
It is. I'm going to ask for its view on me, and maybe I'll send you a little message afterwards, just to give you a kind of thumbs up or thumbs down.
Do it.
But anyway, listen. Thanks ever so much for being here. We'll do it again sometime soon. All right.
You're very welcome. Thanks a lot, Mark.
Brilliant. Cheers.